Fred Gomez Carrasco is released from prison in 1967. The 27-year-old returns home to a city in transition. Downtown San Antonio is under construction. The city is getting ready for a World's Fair, Hemisphere 68. It's a big deal for San Antonio and deeply symbolic. Hemisphere 68 signals an embrace of the future in a city known for its history. Workers pour concrete for an elevated monorail, exhibition spaces for 30 countries, and the 750-foot Tower of the Americas. Fred Carrasco can see that things have changed. Many of Carrasco's old haunts are gone, bulldozed to make way for the almost 100-acre fair. I doubt Fred recognizes the place. Hemisphere 68 is San Antonio's attempt to rebrand itself as a modern international city. But there's little room in this imagined contemporary metropolis for people like Fred Carrasco. He's a brown-skinned, undereducated, convicted felon. Fred's options are limited. So Fred looks south, and he bets his future on a centuries-old trade route that runs from deep inside Mexico to San Antonio. Carrasco sets out to establish a supply chain that will move heroin from central Mexico across the border to San Antonio and beyond. The plan is brilliant on paper, but in the real world, it borders on insanity. The heroin business in Mexico is controlled by entrenched and dangerous criminal organizations. I can't be sure if Fred Carrasco simply doesn't understand the danger or just doesn't care. Carrasco looks south, toward Mexico. In the distance, he sees a heroin empire. I'm Joseph Tovares. This is episode 3 of The Return of Fred Carrasco, Rise and Fall. In early 1969, Fred fails to show up for a scheduled meeting with his parole officer. Federal authorities charge him with violating the terms of his release. Published reports indicate that soon after, Fred Gomez Carrasco heads to the border and into Mexico. What happens next is murky. As a producer, I'm at a dead end. I need a witness with first-hand knowledge. After months of phone calls, emails, and texts, I get a call from the son of a well-known Carrasco associate in San Antonio. He tells me to expect a phone call, and he assures me that this guy, Joe, is the real deal. A few days later, I get a call from someone who tells me he helped Carrasco set up his Mexican operation. I am, of course, suspicious. It's almost too good to be true. But a background check confirms his identity, as well as a lengthy criminal record. The details he shares, names, locations, events, all line up with historical records. Not long after that phone call, I'm on a plane to San Antonio to meet with this mysterious man who knew Carrasco in a way that very few others did. Our first of several meetings takes place at a restaurant on Guadalupe Street, in the heart of San Antonio's Mexican barrio. After just a few minutes, he asks that we leave the restaurant. He prefers to talk in my rental car. I know Joe has a violent past, and I admit to some reservation about getting in a car with him. But as we say in Spanish, ni modo. I really don't have a choice. His participation is crucial. In the car, Joe tells me what he does to survive in Mexico. Smuggling people across the river is one of his side hustles. One day, he gets a request to bring a U.S. national across the river into Mexico. Fred Gomez Carrasco can't risk crossing at the international bridge. So on a dark, moonless night, Joe takes Fred on a short boat ride across the river and into Mexico. Once they land, he leads Fred through a muddy patch of sharp reeds and to a waiting motorcycle.
He was the one you crank, an oldie, but we started it and he took us to Laredo.
Joe's work will extend well beyond getting Fred across the river. His connections in Mexico's underworld and his ability to fly under the radar will be invaluable to Fred, who seems to think that he's safe on Mexican soil.
He gets, I think, a few $1,000s, because he wanted to go to an expensive hotel. I told him, you know what, I don't get near to those places, and I wouldn't advise you to go to a place like that. I'll take you to a place, help you rent a house in disguise,
Joe is cautious. He secures a small house for Carrasco in a working-class neighborhood. Joe will eventually rent 3 small homes for Carrasco's operation in the Mexican border city. Once settled, Carrasco gets to work. He brings in people to build out his team, identifies the Mexican customs officials he needs to pay off in order to get his product across the border, and he searches for connections to major heroin suppliers in central Mexico.
And then he started trying to get people from the interior that would come over, and they sold him connections, Some people from there that worked for somebody, Well, you know what? I know who brings him this and that,
He was trying to cut out the middleman.
He was trying to cut out the middleman by the force, He started killing people. He started torturing people to get information of the connections and killing them. He wasn't going to let them live, And that started getting around. He didn't care. And that started getting people upset, What is this foreigner doing over here trying to take our business, His business is on the other side.
Fred Carrasco is a foreigner in Mexico. He may be brown-skinned and speak Spanish, but in Mexico, he's a pocho. That's a derogatory term for people of Mexican descent, born and raised in the United States. Carrasco is too Mexican for Texas and not Mexican enough for Mexico. In Mexico, he operates like a gringo. Carrasco parachutes in with money and muscle and forces his way into the heroin market. The word that comes to mind is hubris. Carrasco is cocky and arrogant. His time in Nuevo Laredo is bloody. Carrasco will later claim that he did not personally kill anyone in Mexico.
No, that's a lie. He killed a lot. Most of the people he killed himself. He did it. He killed a lot of people through the back too, he got upset because I told him, I said, I've never shot nobody in the back. I says, I do it through the front, And he kind of didn't like that, He gave me a very dirty look, He was a bad person by heart, because, it's all right if you kill somebody, but you kill it for a reason, He's going to kill you, or you're going to kill him or something, and then, you do it.
Joe's comments make me wonder about his work for Carrasco in Mexico. When I ask him to more clearly define his role, he's evasive. But at one point in the conversation, he refers to himself as a pistolero, a hired gun. Joe goes out of his way to let me know that he's not a member of the Carrasco organization. He maintains his distance from Carrasco, he says, and he doesn't trust him.
I never gave my back for anything, man. If I was with him, I always, where I could see him, And I always had my gun some clip, man, I was always armed. I had a 45 and a 357 Magnum.
It's a lot to wrap my head around. Joe, unlike me, doesn't see Carrasco through some political lens. His relationship to Carrasco is transactional. He's hired muscle. And he sees Carrasco as a cold-blooded killer. When I asked Joe if he ever actually witnessed Carrasco kill someone, he pauses, and then he tells me that he did not. I get the sense that Joe is looking for cover, trying to avoid any direct connection to Fred's supposed murders in Mexico. But I can't be sure. Joe confirms what a lot of people say about Fred Carrasco. The drug baron and reputed killer is a one-woman man. He's completely devoted to his wife, Rosa.
And I never seen him with another woman, to tell you the truth, because I had a car, so I had money in my pocket, so. And I asked him a few times if he wanted to go get a girl. He never said, he said no. But I think he was just for Rosa, because when she come, he treated her like a queen,
According to Joe, Rosa Carrasco is a frequent visitor.
She used to go and come.
There's a lot of speculation about Rosa Carrasco and her role in Fred's criminal organization. Like Fred, she's a nuanced character and hard to figure out. According to Joe, Rosa is a critical part of Fred's operation.
Well, Rosa was the main contact. She was running some part of it because he was over there.
Is Rosa Carrasco a courier, delivering information and money to Fred in Mexico? Or are her visits personal? Or a combination of both? Some will try to minimize her role. Others will cast her as the mastermind. All I know for certain is that she's a constant presence in the life of Fred Carrasco. People tell me that Carrasco is a smart man. Former cops, lawyers, reporters all say the same thing, and they're right. But Fred Carrasco is also very lucky. There's a border drug war raging in the early 70s when Carrasco looks to expand into Mexico, and it works in his favor. Things get so bad in Nuevo Laredo that the Mexican president sends in the army. When the smoke clears, the two families who control the flow of drugs across the international bridge, the Gaitans and the Reyes Brunedas, are destroyed. Fred Gomez Carrasco emerges virtually unscathed. Carrasco's next stop is the Mexican city of Monterrey. Joe helps Carrasco set up safe houses in the industrial city, a planned stopover in their smuggling route. From there, it's on to Guadalajara, the center of the heroin business in Mexico. Fred's ambitious plan for his own international heroin pipeline is within reach, and people have noticed. Once little known, Carrasco is now a player. People know his name. As Fred Carrasco rises from local drug dealer to international drug boss, Detective Sergeant William Big Bill Weilbacher watches from San Antonio. The veteran detective is at the height of his power when Carrasco expands his operation into Mexico. Weilbacher runs a small unit known as the Felony Squad. No one can tell me the exact purpose of the unit, but it appears that Weilbacher and his team can pick and choose what to investigate. Bill Weilbacher has Carrasco in his crosshairs and taps into his sources to gather intelligence.
Because I don't think there's any policeman today that could match the snitches he had.
Fred Gomez Carrasco is in Mexico, far from Weilbacher's reach. But Big Bill is watching and waiting. By the summer of 1972, Fred Gomez Carrasco is in Guadalajara. He buys high-grade European heroin. His fleet of couriers in modified cars ferry the heroin across Mexico, the border, and into San Antonio and beyond. Heroin flows north, and millions of dollars flow south back to Carrasco. Fred Carrasco can now provide for his family. His wife and children, including a newborn son, live in a home on the banks of Lake Chapala, just outside Guadalajara. They're surrounded by other U.S. expats. Fred Carrasco is living his best life.
I love Mexico. Most happiest years of my life I spent over there.
But things are about to change. Mexican police in Guadalajara recognize one of Carrasco's men on the street. There's a warrant for his arrest. That chance encounter is the start of the fall of the Carrasco organization. In less than 24 hours, Fred's house of cards collapses. Carrasco is arrested and his wife and parents deported back to the U.S. According to the Associated Press, $21 million worth of heroin is confiscated. Carrasco is locked up in a Mexican military prison, along with his half-brother, Roberto Gomez. Carrasco says he's tortured, and I have no reason to doubt him. Soon after the brothers are locked up, Roberto is found dead in his cell. I tracked down a State Department Foreign Service report on his death. The medical examiner finds third-degree contusions of the neck with fractures of the tracheal cartilage. Prison officials report it as a suicide. Carrasco claims prison guards murdered his brother. On September 24, 1972, an article appears in the San Antonio Express. The headline reads, "S.A. Dope Suspect Takes Life." The story is about the death of Roberto Gomez, but for Detective Sergeant William Big Bill Weilbacher, the bigger story is in the third paragraph. Fred Gomez Carrasco is in custody. Within days, the San Antonio cop is on a plane to Guadalajara, where the two men will meet face to face. I'm Joseph Tovares. This is the return of Fred Carrasco. Join me for Episode 4, Finding Fred Carrasco. Within days of his arrest, Carrasco gets a visit in prison from Detective Sergeant Big Bill Weilbacher. What they talk about remains a mystery. Not long after, Carrasco escapes and makes his way back home to San Antonio. For the next several months, Carrasco's on the loose, runs circles around the cops, and becomes a cult hero. It all comes to a head at the El Tejas Motel in July of 1973.
And all of a sudden they said, "That's him." And Sergeant Weilbacher said, "Fred, it's all over. Put your hands up." And he said, "F you." And that's when the gun battle started.
To learn more, visit thereturnoffredcarrasco.com. Leslie Norman is the executive producer of the project. Her wisdom and guidance are much appreciated. Noy Mahoney is a San Antonio-based journalist. His knowledge of the Carrasco story and his connections in the city were invaluable. Michelle Mondo, an amazing researcher and private investigator in San Antonio, tracked down many of the people who made this story come to life, and she unearthed long-forgotten documents. The remarkable scholarship of Mike Tapia, David Montejano, Jean Morales, Diana Montejano, and Juano Sanchez helped me see Carrasco in context. George Cisneros and Urban 15 offered their space for recording of interviews on many of my visits to San Antonio. The Return of Fred Carrasco is produced by me, Joseph Tovares. The idea for this podcast was developed in partnership with my late brother Raul, who passed away during the production, but whose imprint is on every episode. I miss my big brother every day. And a special thanks to my wife Munya, who allowed me to descend for several years into the dark depths of this story, and whose support for me never wavered. Gracias a todos. The Return of Fred Carrasco is a production of Joseph Tovares, LLC. Copyright 2026. All rights reserved.